Hey guys, real quick before I get to the video, as part of my holiday giveaway, I've partnered with Rocket Powered Sound to give away 2 of their Ultimate EDM Serum preset packs. They're normally 97 bucks each, but they're on sale for the holidays, and I'm giving away 2 of these to 2 of my subscribers. So stay tuned to the end of the video to see how you can win. Hey everyone, this is MusicTechHelpGuy, and welcome to part 1 of my Serum tutorial series. This is a multi-part series where I'll explore all of the different sound modules and sound capabilities of the Serum Wavetable synthesizer from Xfer Records. In this video, I'll specifically cover Wavetable Synthesis, the oscillators and their parameters, choosing and customizing subtables in the Wavetable Editor, the voicing parameters, and a few other cool tips and tricks to start you off. This will probably be a bit longer video than most of my other videos because I've left timestamps in the YouTube navigation as well as in the description and comments below. So feel free to skip through the introduction if you like, or skip around in each of these videos. But if you're new to electronic music production and synthesis, you probably are going to want to watch each of these videos from beginning to end because there's a lot of useful information here that's not just applicable to Serum, it's applicable to synthesis, sound design, and synthesis modulation as a whole. So first, let's talk a bit about how you can get Serum if you don't already own it. Right now, Serum is $189 US if you buy it outright from Xfer Records. However, if you want to space this out in payments, you can check out my Splice affiliate link below, and you can do the rent-to-own option from Splice, where you only pay $9.99 a month until it's paid off. This is the exact same way that I bought Serum. All right, so let's get into the tutorial. Serum is a wavetable synthesizer, which means that you have multiple different complex waveforms that you can pick from, as opposed to just the standard 4 oscillator waveforms, sine, triangle, square, and sawtooth, that are in most analog style synths. The oscillator is the element in a synthesizer that generates sound. So when you can start off with a more complex waveform, you don't necessarily have to modulate the sound as much if you don't want to. And you can already start with a sound that's pretty interesting and unique. Now, as most of you know, I'm primarily a Logic user. So Serum for me is sort of an honorary successor to the ES2. This is sort of what I would want an update to the ES2 to be like. Up top, there are 4 tabs. There's the oscillator section, effects section, the matrix, and the global controls. Note that changing these 4 tabs up here only affects the top half of Serum. Everything in the bottom half are the modulation parameters, which we'll talk about in later videos. In the top menu here, there's a bunch of different presets you can pick from. And you can click the forward and back arrows to scroll through these. So there's definitely some cool presets to start off in here. If you don't want to use the menu this way, you can click right here and you can view all of the presets in a list, and you can organize them by content filters. There's a menu here. If you pull this down, there's a bunch of different options. Some of these we'll talk about later, but the one I want to show you right now is Initialize Preset. What this does is it resets Serum back to the default setting. And then in the upper right, there's a master volume control for the whole instrument. Now, don't assume that you want this to be at 100%, because sometimes when you're layering up multiple oscillators and adding some, pretty intense modulation, the volume can clip. So you want to pull this down to make sure that the output level coming out of Serum isn't too loud. Next, let's talk about the oscillators. There are 2 main oscillators that you can blend together, Oscillator A and Oscillator B. Now, it may seem a bit limited to just have 2 oscillators, but I'm going to show you in just a bit how Wavetable Synthesis really opens up the floodgates for new sounds and new creativity and being able to layer up multiple more complex tones. So we'll get to that in just a bit. You can select any number of different preset oscillator waveforms. These are actually wavetables, and we'll discuss wavetables versus subtables and different variations on each wavetable in just a bit. I'm going to turn off Oscillator B for now, and up top here you'll see some tuning controls for each oscillator. So you can tune the oscillator in octaves. You can do this by just clicking and dragging, or you can do this by double clicking and typing. So if I want to go up an octave, I can type +1. If I want to go down an octave, I can type -1. Or go back to the starting octave, just type 0. And the cool thing about this is you can blend together different sounds. So maybe I want one oscillator up an octave, but the other one down an octave. Or if I'm creating a bass, I might want one of them an octave lower. In addition, you can also alter the semitone tuning. So semitones are your half steps on the keyboard. So maybe I want one of these to be up 7 semitones, which is a perfect fifth. Or maybe I want some harmony in major thirds. I'll type 4 semitones. In addition, you can adjust the fine tuning of the oscillator. So one quick trick that's pretty common in synthesizers is to detune your oscillators from each other in cents. Now with cents, there's 100 cents in each semitone, and then there's 12 semitones per octave. So this is a really fine way of tuning the oscillators. But if I were to detune one down by 5 cents, and then detune the other one up by 5 cents, I'm gonna get a bit of a natural chorus effect. However, I'll show you in just a bit how you can get some really deep detuning effects. In addition to these traditional tuning features, there's also a coarse tuning option. And essentially what this does is it allows you to tune up or down the oscillator. So it's sort of like a smooth glide. So if I stop at -12, I've detuned down by 12 semitones. Note that right now my instrument is polyphonic, which means that I can play multiple notes at the same time. I'm going to stay like this just for now for demonstration, but toward the end of this video, I'll show you the voicing controls down here if you want to create an instrument that's monophonic or legato or has glide to it. Okay, so one thing you'll notice here with Oscillator B is it's got a different view here. And this is the wavetable view of that oscillator. You can actually do this with any of the oscillators just by clicking on this 2D voltage view, and you'll get a wavetable view. Now, the real magic of wavetable synthesis is that not only can you choose an oscillator waveform, you can also select a number of different waveforms derived from this starting waveform. And you can do this by adjusting the wavetable position knob down here. And you'll see you get a huge selection of different waveforms to select from. Each one of these waveforms is called a subtable, and you'll see the subtable number down here. So this is subtable 1 of this set of 256 different waveforms or subtables that we can pick from. One of the lesser known areas in Serum, especially to new users, is the Wavetable Editor. If you click here, this will take you to a Wavetable Editor where you can see the actual waveform shape of that subtable. And if you click down here, there's different thumbnails of different sort of preset waveforms, different preset subtables that you can pick from. However, you can manually go through each of these here as well, and you'll see this sort of natural progression of how the wavetable morphs and changes, and you can really hone in on a particular subtable that you like. In addition, you can actually draw in your own custom subtable shape, and there's different tools for this over here. And you can even draw in and adjust the harmonics in each subtable to create your own custom sounds. In part 2 of this series, we'll be focusing on just the Wavetable Editor and some of the more advanced options in here. You can even import audio and create custom wavetables from that audio. So that's something we'll talk about in the next video, including some of these advanced editing tools. For now, I'll just go back to subtable 1, and then I'll click here to go back to my main view. All right, earlier I said that you could blend 2 different oscillators and fine-tune them and detune them from each other to create a natural sort of modulation or chorus effect. But another way to do this is to detune the oscillator with itself. So this is one of the easiest ways to smooth out the tone of a raw oscillator sound. So to do this, you're going to play with these three options here, the Unison, Detune, and Blend options. So Unison will stack up additional voices on top of the original sound. So you can have up to 16 additional voices all stacked on top of each other in unison. Now, when you have that many voices stacked on top of each other and they're all the same pitch, you're just going to get something that's louder. What we want to do is detune them. So not only will they be a bit louder, they'll also have a bit of a natural chorus effect to them. And in addition to being able to adjust the detuning of each of these voices, you can also blend these voices with the original oscillator sound. Now, the ability to detune oscillators like this is a pretty common technique that's in almost every single digital synth out there. However, the way Serum approaches it is really unique because usually detuning is a global setting, not an oscillator by oscillator setting. So this is really cool because you could have one detuned oscillator and then a second oscillator where maybe I want this to be down an octave and I don't want this to be detuned quite as much. Maybe just a couple voices here. This is just going to sort of reinforce the bass. I'll click here to go back to my 2D voltage view. And the phase control allows you to adjust the start point in the waveform. So when you press the key to trigger a note, where does the waveform start? Most of the time, you'd think it just starts at the beginning. But if you start it later on, you can throw the oscillator sort of out of phase, and you'll get some different phase cancellation and phase effects. And I don't mean that in a bad way here. And in addition to that, you can randomize the position of that start point. So if you want the waveform to always start right at the beginning, you'll pull both of these all the way down. Now, notice that you're getting a bit of like a even more noticeable chorus effect there. That's because all of the unison voices are starting at the same point. And remember, they're all detuned a little bit. So what happens when you take two sounds that are almost identical and one of them's detuned? Well, you get this sort of phase cancellation comb filter effect. So this is actually a pretty important thing to keep on and to randomize, especially when you're using multiple unison voices to get a smoother sound. This knob at the bottom here that says off allows you to select one of several different warp modes. What this does is it allows you to warp the oscillator waveform. I think this is a really cool control. In addition to being able to adjust the wavetable position, you can also warp each of those subtables. So this is really cool. So this is what I was saying before. It may seem limited to just have two oscillators, but when you have this much control over each oscillator, you really don't need more than two. And then lastly, there's a pan control and just a level control. So if you want one of the oscillators to be a bit louder and one of them to be a bit softer, you can balance them out here. Okay, cool. So that's it for the oscillator section. Let's talk about the voicing section. So right now, everything I've been playing is polyphonic, meaning that I can play multiple notes at once. You can adjust the amount of the polyphony here, up to 32 voices at once. You can use the monophonic option, so you can just play one note at a time. So if I hold one note and then play another note, it automatically jumps to that note without playing both of them. Whereas if I have this in polyphonic mode, I can play chords. So I'm going to turn this on. There's also a legato mode. What legato mode does is it connects the notes and sort of smoothly connects the notes. So I find this really helpful for synth leads, anything that's going to be maybe like a synth melody. I find this incredibly helpful for things like that. Now, if you want to smooth out the transitions between notes even more, you can play around with this Portamento option down here. What this does is essentially adds glide between the notes, and you can choose between 0 milliseconds and 8 full seconds of Portamento. There's a Portamento option here that says always. What Portamento always does is it always applies the pitch glide between notes, even if the notes aren't connected. So if I play a low note and then play a high note, the Portamento is there. Let me pull this up a bit more. Whereas if you turn this off, the Portamento is only going to be there if the two notes are overlapping and connected. Normally, I don't use the always mode, but for certain effects, it can be helpful. In addition, you can scale your Portamento. What this means is that if you play an interval that's closer together, the Portamento will be quicker. And then if you play an interval that's larger, like an octave or two, the Portamento will scale based on the interval that you're playing. So it'll go slower for larger intervals, and it will go quicker for smaller intervals. In addition, you can apply a curve to the Portamento. So if you make this sort of like an exponential curve like this, the Portamento is going to happen quickly at first, and then slow toward the end. And then if I pull this down, the Portamento will happen slowly at first, but then quickly at the end. So again, this can be used for various creative effects. Okay, so off screen, I came up with just a real basic idea for my little patch here I made in Serum. Let's see what it sounds like. Now, if only we could change these parameters across time and give my little baseline here a bit more variation. Well, you can do that. You don't even need to use any of the modulation sources yet. You can actually automate any of these parameters. So in Logic here, I'm just going to pull up my automation. I'm going to pull up my touch mode, and I'm just going to press play, and I'm going to morph my wavetable position a bit to draw in some variation. And then let me try playing with my warp parameter here. Then I'll just go back to read mode, and all of those parameters will be remembered. Let's make it a bit more percussive. Later on, I'll show you how to do this with modulation within Serum using the envelopes. But for now, I'm just going to do this with an effect. This is the Tremolo plugin in Logic. I'm just going to create a mono tremolo effect that synchronizes to 16th notes. All right, so that wraps up this introduction to Serum, its oscillators, the Wavetable Editor, and Sub-Tables, and the voicing section. You can probably see why now that I'm doing this in multiple parts rather than just one video. If I did it all in one video, it'd probably be 4 hours long. So I think it's better to sort of chop this up into more manageable parts. In the next video, I'll dive into some of Serum's advanced Wavetable Editor features. And again, remember, if you want to win a free copy of the Ultimate EDM Serum Pack, all you have to do is subscribe to my channel, subscribe to Rocket Powered Sound on YouTube, and leave a comment below, and let me know if there's anything in particular you'd like to see from this series, any particular genres or techniques. I'd be happy to add it to a future video. As always, thank you so much for the support, and thanks for watching.